He was 8 years old the first time he danced. Alone. No music. No audience. Just the click of rain against the church's stained glass windows and the echo of footsteps from men with blood on their knuckles. Timothée didn't even know why he moved the way he did. He only knew it felt like breathing for the first time. His father, Salvatore, would have skinned him alive if he saw it. Because sons of mafia bosses don't dance. They learn to shoot before they shave. They swear omerta before they can spell it. They break fingers, not forms. They move silently, not gracefully. But Timothée wasn't like the others. He didn't belong in the villa. The villa wasn't a house. It was a fortress with velvet wallpaper and golden ashtrays where men sat in silence, waiting for permission to speak. Chandeliers dripped over them like frozen blood. The hall smelled of lemon oil, sweat, and sin. That's where he grew up, not with lullabies, but with whispered threats and men who kissed his forehead one day and broke someone's kneecaps the next. His mother died when he was 6. A car accident, they told him. He found her rosary in the glove compartment, covered in blood. He never asked again. But after that, something in him shifted, like a crack in a mirror that just kept spreading. His father thought it was grief. The men thought it was weakness. But it wasn't. It was resistance. He watched old VHS tapes in the attic, hidden between boxes of cigars and stolen documents. Performances of Nureyev, Baryshnikov, Zakharova. He didn't understand their names, but their bodies spoke in a language he could finally understand. He started mimicking them in secret. When everyone was asleep, when the villa was silent and the ghosts came out to listen, he danced in hallways stained with old wine and betrayal. He danced where men had been murdered for less than a lie. He danced like it was the only truth he had. By the time he was 15, his body was lean, wiry, and fast. The other boys in the family were lifting weights, training in the backroom gyms, learning to intimidate. Timothée snuck out in the mornings and took ballet classes under a fake name, Matteo. Matteo didn't carry a gun. Matteo didn't belong to the shadows. Matteo was free. But freedom, like art, has a price. It was on a Sunday when everything began to fall apart. He returned home from class, sweaty, euphoric, the scent of rosin still clinging to his shoes. The villa was too quiet. Even the birds outside the citrus trees were gone. He stepped into the foyer and saw his father's shoes. Just the shoes. Polished. Black. Still. The rest of Salvatore lay in the next room. On the Persian rug. Blood pooling under his shoulder. A look on his face like he'd finally remembered something important, and it was too late. Timothée didn't scream. He didn't cry. He looked at the shoes, then at the body, then closed the door. Later, they'd say it was the Albany family. A revenge killing. The price of a treaty broken 5 years ago. But in his gut, Timothée knew better. This wasn't revenge. It was a message. To him, the funeral was a theater of power. Men with sunglasses and gold rings. Women dressed like widows even if they were mistresses. Priests who didn't know the name of the man they were burying. Timothée didn't speak. He just watched. And when it was over, Don Emilio, his father's oldest ally, put a hand on his shoulder. "Now you belong to us," he said. Timothée just nodded. But inside, he was already planning his escape. Except escape wasn't so simple. The villa was now his. The name, the reputation, the legacy. Boys in the family began looking at him differently, half respect, half doubt, as if wondering whether he'd lead or ruin them. Don Emilio moved into the West Wing. "You're not ready to lead," he said. "But we'll make sure you survive long enough to be." Survive. That's all it was to them. Survival. But Timothée wanted to live. He still danced. Late at night. In the empty study, where his father used to smoke and shout orders over the phone. He danced like he was shedding a skin. Like every ply burned away the man they wanted him to be. Then came the audition. He'd heard about it by accident. A flyer posted outside a train station, half torn by rain. The Royal Conservatory in Rome was holding an anonymous selection. No background checks. Just talent. Winner gets a scholarship. A new life. He stole away on a Friday. Took a bus through the night. No guards. No weapons. Just Matteo. He danced like his life depended on it. And maybe it did. The judges said nothing after he finished. Just silence. Then, one of them, a woman with silver hair and the eyes of someone who's forgotten more than most will ever know, said, "Who taught you to dance like that?" "No one," he said. "I just needed to." She looked at him like she saw everything. "You have the rage of someone who's been silenced." He didn't answer. She smiled. "You're in." It should have been the happiest moment of his life. But happiness, like peace, Doesn't last long when your last name means something in blood. The next day, the conservatory was set on fire. No survivors. The news called it an accident. He knew better. Back at the villa, Don Emilio poured him a glass of whiskey. "I told you," he said, "you don't belong anywhere but here." Timothee looked at the man. The rings. The smile. And for the first time, he smiled back. Not because he meant it, but because he had a plan. He would dance again. But this time, he wouldn't run. He'd make them watch. The plan started with silence. He let Don Emilio believe the message had been received. That the fire had smothered the dancer in him. That the dream had curled into ash just like the auditorium in Rome. He attended the family meetings. He poured wine for men who ordered deaths in between pasta courses. He learned to say less and listen more. And slowly, they began to trust him. That was their mistake. Because Timothee was listening. Closely. To who moved what? Who owed who? Who feared what? The Albany family didn't torch the conservatory, he confirmed it himself. That hit came from within. Someone had watched him leave. Someone had followed him. Someone wanted him to forget. But Timothee had a better memory than they realized. The fire hadn't destroyed him. It clarified him. For the first time, he understood something fundamental. They didn't fear the dancer in him because it made him weak. They feared it because it made him free. And you can't own a man who dances for no one. He resumed training in secret. But not at studios. He danced in ruins. Abandoned chapels with cracked stone floors. Under bridges where the wind screamed louder than traffic. His body hardened. His lines sharpened. He moved like a whisper with a knife hidden in it. By day, he was the obedient heir. By night, he was becoming something else. And then came her. She entered his life like a bruise you don't remember getting, slow, dark, spreading. Her name was Allegra. She arrived at a party thrown for a corrupt judge whose daughter had just survived a kidnapping. Champagne, opera, men in suits pretending to smile. Allegra didn't belong there, which is exactly why she did. She wore no makeup. Hair tied back. Eyes like cracked marble. She didn't speak to anyone. She watched. And Timothee, who never noticed anyone at these events, couldn't look away. She saw him, too. Through him. That night, as the party bled into silence and the lights dimmed, he found her on the terrace, barefoot, smoking. "You hate all of them," she said. He didn't answer. She took a drag, exhaled toward the moon. "So do I." He laughed. The first real laugh in months. "Why are you here then?" "Same reason you are," she said, flicking ash into the wind. "I'm pretending to belong." She didn't ask about his father, or the rumors, or the fire. She asked if he could move. Not fight. Move. He took her to the ruined chapel 2 nights later. She didn't gasp when he danced. Didn't smile. Just watched. Still. Like she was listening to something inside him. When he finished, breathless, drenched, she said, "You look like someone who was never allowed to cry." He didn't say anything. She stepped closer. "Let's make them cry for you." It began with performances in hidden places. Underground clubs. Rooftop galleries. Rooms that weren't on maps. Allegra curated them like rituals. No cameras. No names. Just movement. Just release. Timothee didn't use Matteo anymore. He danced under his real name. And people came. Not just for beauty. For truth. The kind you can't say out loud. The kind that lives in the body. That pulses behind ribs and presses against skin. Each performance was a confession. A warning. A memory. And then, it went viral. Someone filmed one. It leaked. And just like that, he wasn't a shadow anymore. He was visible. To the world. To the press. And to Don Emilio. The villa erupted. Don Emilio didn't scream. He didn't throw things. He simply placed the phone with the video on the table and hit play. The screen showed Timothee, half-naked, soaked in sweat, spinning like he was bleeding music. The room watched in silence. When it ended, Emilio leaned forward. "You understand what you've done?" Timothee nodded. "I do. This is a betrayal." "No," he said. "This is me." Emilio poured himself a drink. "You have 24 hours to fix this. And if I don't?" The Don sipped, smiled. "Then I will." That night, Allegra was gone. Her apartment, empty. Her phone, dead. Her name, erased from every system she was in. Someone had pulled her out of the story. He knew what that meant. He knew who had done it. So he stopped hiding. He called a meeting. All the lieutenants. All the captains. All the men who once laughed behind his back. He walked in wearing black slacks, a tight ballet shirt, bruises on his knees, and rage in his eyes. No guns. No apologies. Just presence. "I'm not my father," he said, "and I don't care if you respect me. But if you try to cage me, I will dance on your grave." Some laughed. One didn't. Vittorio, a man built like a butcher, hands like boulders, his father's old enforcer, the man who watched him grow up. He stood, stepped forward, and said, "Show us." "What? You say you're something else. Prove it." Timothée stared, then stepped into the center of the room. No music, no stage, just concrete and men. And he danced. He danced like every nerve in his body was on fire. He danced like it was a weapon. He danced until the air cracked. And when he stopped, bleeding, trembling, chest heaving, no one spoke. Not even Vittorio. They didn't applaud, but they didn't shoot. And in that silence, something shifted. He wasn't a ghost anymore. He was a storm. And storms don't ask for permission. The day after the dance, no one said a word to him at the villa. No threats. No orders. No questions. Just nods. Not respect. Not yet. But recognition. Like a wolf reluctantly acknowledging the moon. Timothée didn't smile. He didn't relax. He knew what silence meant in this world. It was the sound of knives being sharpened just out of sight. He started carrying a gun. Not because he wanted to. Because he had to. The performances didn't stop. They just went deeper underground. Allegra was still missing, but her influence remained. Hidden venues whispered her name like she was a myth. And in those shadows, Timothée became something else entirely. A movement. He stopped dancing for himself. He started dancing for them. For the queer kid whose father spit in his face. For the woman who couldn't cry in her own home. For the boy with bruises on his back and music in his soul. For every person who had been told to sit down, shut up, blend in. His body became a manifesto. And it spread. Not on social media, that was too easy. Through whispers. Word of mouth. Late-night texts and secret passwords. People showed up in basements, warehouses, abandoned subway tunnels. Some had never seen ballet. Some had never seen themselves. Now they did. Through him. And that's when the family started losing control. Because people started asking questions. Why is the heir of a mafia dynasty performing in drag? Why is he moving like revolution wrapped in silk? Why does his movement make people cry? And most dangerously, why aren't we stopping him? Don Emilio called for another meeting. But this one wasn't with Timothée. It was with outsiders. Foreign men. Cold eyes. Clean suits. Not part of the family, part of something older. Bigger. The kind of men who don't blink when they end bloodlines. Timothée found out through Vittorio. The old enforcer had become something unexpected, loyal. Not to the family. To him. "You've made enemies," he said one night, pressing a burner phone into Timothy's hand. "Real ones." "How real?" "They want you gone. Not just dead. Erased." Timothée stared at the phone. "Then we make it harder to forget me." The next performance wasn't hidden. It was broadcast. Not online. On televisions hijacked across Naples. On city projectors that hadn't worked in years. On ancient cathedral walls. A live feed. Of Timothée. Standing alone in an abandoned theater. Barefoot. Dressed in white. Cuts on his arms from a fight earlier that day. He didn't speak. He danced. And it wasn't beautiful. It was violent. Frantic. Like exorcism. Like truth clawing its way out of skin. People watched from balconies. From alleyways. From rooftops. And when it ended, he collapsed. The feed cut out. The city was silent. Until the cheering started. And spread. Like fire. That night, they came for him. Black cars. No plates. Faces covered. He didn't run. He was waiting. They stormed the theater. Empty. He was already gone. Because Vittorio knew. Always one step ahead. He had Timothée in a vineyard once used for smuggling. Underground. Cramped. Damp. Perfect. There, Timothée trained. Not for art. For war. He trained his breath. His silence. His balance. He trained to hear footsteps before they turned corners. He trained to speak with his body and kill with his eyes. And then, one day she came back. Allegra. Hair bust. Scars on her wrists. Same eyes. He didn't ask where she'd been. She didn't ask if he'd missed her. They just looked at each other. And nodded. She brought a list. Names. Locations. Targets. But they weren't political. They were symbolic. The men who funded silence. The buildings where voices died. The faces behind the masks that tried to bury beauty. "You ready?" she asked. He stretched his arms. "Let's dance." The next phase wasn't a show. It was an uprising. Timothée didn't just perform, he invaded. Opera houses. Banks. Courtrooms. Every stage became a confession. Every movement, a confrontation. And people followed. Dancers. Artists. Kids from the street who'd never taken a class but moved like poetry on fire. They called themselves La Spina the Thorn. Because they weren't here to be beautiful. They were here to pierce. And the city bled. Posters went up. Graffiti bloomed. Let the world feel what it made us swallow. Movement is memory. And we remember. He's not your heir. He's your reckoning. Timothee's face was everywhere. But not as a leader. As a symbol of what happens when beauty refuses to be quiet. Then came the night of the final performance. The one they all knew might be the end. The family had put a bounty on his head. The government called him a terrorist. The church declared him a blasphemy. So he booked the grandest theater in Naples, the one named after his father, Teatro Salvatore. And he announced the show publicly. One night only. No weapons. No security. Just truth. Vittorio tried to stop him. This is suicide. Timothee kissed his cheek. Then let it be graceful. The night of the final performance, Naples held its breath. People lined the streets. Not in protest. In silence. Like they knew something sacred or dangerous was about to happen. Like the city itself was waiting to exhale. The theater's doors, once reserved for power, opened for everyone. Old women in black shawls. Young boys with pink eyeliner. Broken men who hadn't cried in years. Dancers in torn tights. Cops off duty. Thieves still carrying the scent of adrenaline. They filled every seat. Some stood in the aisles. Others perched on the balconies like ghosts returning to witness the final act. No programs. No music. No announcements. Just one name, etched into the velvet curtain in white chalk. Timothee. Backstage, he stood alone. No bodyguards. No backup. Just chalk on his fingertips. Sweat on his back. And the knowledge that this could be the last time he ever moves. Allegra touched his shoulder. You don't have to do this, she said. He looked at her. I never had a choice. She handed him a silver chain. Not for luck. For memory. His mother's rosary. He kissed it. Then stepped onto the stage. The lights hit him like judgment. And he welcomed it. He began slow. Deliberate. A single step. A breath. A line traced in air. He wasn't dancing for applause. He was resurrecting every piece of himself they tried to bury. Each movement told a truth. This is where I bled. This is where I broke. This is where I was born, not from love, but from defiance. The theater didn't make a sound. Not a cough. Not a whisper. Even the air held still, like it didn't dare interrupt. Then he leapt. Not just up. Out. Into something bigger. Past the pain. Past the rage. Into something holy. It wasn't ballet anymore. It was survival, weaponized. It was grief turned into flight. It was the scream of every soul forced into silence. And everyone felt it. Some wept. Some stood. One man collapsed to his knees. Even Vittorio, hidden in the wings, wiped his face. Timothee spun like a storm in slow motion. Then he stopped. Stood in the center. Eyes forward. Breathing like a man who just outran death. And whispered. Now you know who I am. A shot rang out. One. Sharp. Quick. Clean. He fell. Slow. Like a curtain closing. Gasps. Screams. Movement. But he didn't move. Allegra ran to him. Blood. Real. Blooming across his ribs. His eyes were open. Still. Still watching. Still dancing inside. She held him. He did it. Someone whispered. He finished it. Another said. The shooter was never found. The bullet disappeared. Some say it was Emilio. Others say it was someone else. Someone bigger. Someone scared. But none of that mattered. Because the next day, Naples exploded. Not in fire. In movement. People danced in the streets. Not for joy. For grief. For rebellion. For him. Weeks later, murals appeared. Of a man mid-leap. Arms stretched like wings. A bullet frozen just inches from his chest. Graffiti under it read. He never hit the ground. Theaters changed their policies. Art schools opened new scholarships in his name. And La Spina grew. From a handful of dancers to a global force. They don't carry weapons. They carry mirrors. They show the world its own face, beautiful, ugly, broken, whole. And somewhere, far from Naples, in a village with no name, a boy stands in an empty church. He plays a scratched VHS tape. Nureyev. He doesn't know who Timothee was. But when he dances, he moves like him. Like he remembers something he was never told. Like resistance passed through his bones before he was born. And outside, Across cracked stone and silence, someone has written in red. Let the body speak. Let the silence bleed. Let him never be forgotten.